This is continuous coverage.
Continuous coverage.
In the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell from the Hidden Killers podcast.
Hidden Killers podcast.
That it is, and we're up to segment number 3 of our continuous coverage here on the 20th of April, 2023. Let's go back to the courtroom.
You've given talks about visions of secret combinations in Washington, D.C. Is that correct?
Yes.
You've given talks about visions of secret combinations in England and Saudi Arabia. Is that right?
Yes.
You've given talks about evil entities in England, right?
No, I'm not sure where that one's going.
Okay. You've seen visions of Russia and China invading the United States.
Yes.
You've seen visions of Russia and China attacking the United States military and defeating us in 3 days.
Yes.
You've seen visions of the United States being sacrificed for a one-world government. Right.
I don't know where that one came from.
You've been, well, I didn't make this up.
Yeah. Well, the context is what's being avoided. That's why it's difficult here. So.
Okay. So what's the concept about the United States being sacrificed for a one-world government?
Judge, objection again on that concept. I mean, relevance.
All right. At this point, Mr. Archibald, I do think we're getting away from the evidence of the case and direct. So if you could tie this in some way, if it does. If not, I'll sustain the objection.
You talked about having a vision while at Lori Vallow's home in September of 2019. You told that to the prosecutor, right?
Objection misstates the evidence.
Overruled. If the witness can answer, you can correct if that's misstating evidence.
I had a nightmare.
So a nightmare and a vision are two different things.
Yeah.
So how do you define a nightmare versus a vision?
Well, it's like whatever the nightmare was about, it was like I was living in it.
And a vision is just pretend?
No, a vision is when you're observing and you're being shown.
So both a vision and a nightmare are real?
No, not necessarily.
So can you further explain the difference between a vision and a nightmare, how one works and not the other one?
The vision is when you're being shown, when you're being shown things when you're seeing the future, but you're not seeing yourself. Somebody else is presenting it.
And so your visions come from who?
The ones I talked about came from the angels, under God.
And your nightmare comes from who?
It was very adversarial. It was consumed. It was a lot of fear and a lot of darkness, and there was no order to it.
So the fear and darkness came from who?
Well, it was adversarial. I don't know who it came from, but.
And when you say adversarial, are you talking about the devil?
I would say it was from that direction.
An angel of the devil?
Could have been.
You've had these visions and nightmares throughout your time that you knew Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, and Melanie Gibb. Is that right?
No, I just had that experience that night.
Okay. So on the night that you were in Rexburg, you wanted to get a blessing from Chad Daybell. Is that right?
Well, Melanie was just said, I think you need to get a blessing. I'm going to go see if I can get Lori to get Chad. And so I was, I just agreed. I was distraught.
And what is a blessing?
It's when it's exercised under the direction of the priesthood to bless you with deliverance, comfort, or healing, or guidance.
So you wanted a blessing from Chad Daybell?
Well, Melanie just offered to get it. I was in a position where I wasn't all there. I was really struggling with whatever. I just remember it was horrified with what I was seeing.
And so what would a blessing from Chad Daybell do for you?
Give us just a moment. All right, thank you, Madam Clerk.
What would a blessing from Chad Daybell do for you?
What have we done?
Yeah.
Well,
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
I would have hoped for peace, but it wasn't my idea. Melanie was just trying to get help.
And you and
So
Melanie...
I'm
sorry.
I'm sorry.
You and Melanie were in the same room when this nightmare happened?
Yes.
And you were sleeping in JJ's room?
Yes.
And you were woken up by your nightmare?
Yes.
And then you woke up Melanie?
She woke me up because I was, she could tell that something was going on, so.
And so you agreed.
Maybe we woke each other up, I don't know.
And so you agreed to seek help from Chad Daybell?
Yes.
And did Chad Daybell come?
No.
When, had you seen this scratch on Chad's neck from JJ?
He pointed it out, but it was pretty minor.
You didn't see the scuffle, but Chad...
No, I didn't.
But Chad told you about it?
Yes.
And when Chad told you that his wife's time was up, that he had a dream she would die, did you believe that?
I wasn't certain to what to believe at that point.
He was teaching about the 144,000. Is that a concept you're familiar with?
Yes.
And tell us what you understand that to be.
All I understand is during the time of tribulation that God's going to have 144,000 that will cover the earth to gather his elect and to help gather his people and help deliver them from the trying circumstances.
And have you wanted to be part of the 144,000?
No, I mean, it would be an honor, but it's nothing I was seeking.
And I think you told the prosecutor that you didn't think Chad had the authority to gather.
No.
Who do you think has that authority?
The prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And who is that?
Well, now it's President Russell M. Nelson.
Okay. So that's where your disagreement with Chad Daybell was who had authority to do that?
Yes.
Had you ever heard of the Church of the Firstborn before?
I just see it in the scriptures, but.
Yeah, where in the scriptures?
Doctrine and Covenants.
And what's the Doctrine and Covenants?
It's a canonized scripture of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So is the Church of the Firstborn is that in the Holy Bible?
It could be.
Is it in the New Testament or the Old Testament?
It could be. I'm not recalling all this right now.
Is the Church of the Firstborn mentioned in the Book of Mormon?
I don't know.
Who is John the Beloved?
A close disciple of Jesus Christ.
So John the Beloved was told something about the Church of the Firstborn. Is that what you learned from Chad? Or how did those two concepts go together?
I just heard that that's where he had gotten his authority from.
That's where Chad had gotten his authority from?
Yes.
And these are the kinds of things that you talk about on your podcasts?
No.
What do you talk about on your podcast?
On the podcast, they go into topics like fasting, and then a lot of them were the conversion, coming where I came from, and the conversion story, and some experiences from the time I was converted up through my mission, serving in the LDS mission. And so, but they were in the context to build faith. They weren't in the context of seeking these things. They were experiences as a result of repentance and faith and service.
And so when you agreed to do a podcast with Chad and Lori and Melanie on Sunday night in Rexburg, Idaho, what was the topic of that podcast?
First off, it was just Melanie and Lori. Chad was not part of it.
Okay. And so what was the podcast with Melanie and Lori about?
It's about sanctification, and I'm trying to remember what the actual topic was.
What does sanctification mean?
Well, it's when as you repent and serve God, and as you prove faithful to Him, your heart, the Lord changes your heart, makes you clean, makes you whole, and endows you with greater faith.
And your audience for this podcast was, again, who?
It was preparing of people, and there was camps, the preparedness camps. Sometimes I went and spoke at those. So I just a lot of it was not really venues. It was more like camps and organized firesides, family reunions, and I would be invited to either speak or invited to do an interview and cover a topic.
And so, being invited to speak at a preparedness camp, what topics would you talk about?
Judge, I'm going to object. I mean, I understand it's cross your honor, but at some point it becomes irrelevant.
I'll sustain the objection on relevance. I think we're beyond the scope of tying into the evidence of the case at this point, Mr. Archibald.
So, your whole purpose was to get ready for the second coming of Christ in these podcasts?
No.
What was your purpose?
Whole purpose was to build faith and to help identify stumbling blocks to faith, and also to help identify the fruits of faith, and to help identify how involved our Father in heaven is with each one of us when we're truly trusting in His Son, Jesus Christ, and seeking His will.
Now, were you, when you left Lori's apartment on September 23rd, 2019, you indicate that you were anxious to go visit your son in Pocatello?
Yes,
And did Melanie go with you there?
she did.
And that's the time that you say you did not see JJ.
Yes.
And did you call the police?
No, I didn't. Did not.
All right. You didn't have any reason to, right?
I didn't see any reason. Lori was one of the most sweetest, kindest, fun-loving. She was I really enjoyed her. She was a wonderful woman. This stuff kind of hit me that weekend, and I just wasn't, anyway, I just didn't see it was like what they're teaching doesn't match what I see in their character. And so I kind of left a little confused and puzzled and trying to discern.
Well, their character was good, right?
Yeah, I saw goodness, yes.
And
I didn't see any reason to suspect.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, that'll conclude cross-examination. Any redirect by the state?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Defense counsel asked you about dreams and visions. I want to ask you about reality.
Okay.
The morning of, the evening of September 22nd, who carried JJ up to bed?
Alex.
Okay. And the morning of September 23rd, who told you where JJ was?
Lori Vallow.
And what did Lori Vallow say to you about what happened to JJ on the 23rd?
She said he was out of control and she couldn't control him, so she had Alex come and get him.
Okay. And when she said he was out of control, did she give you specific examples, real examples of what she said out of control meant?
That's when she said that he climbed the cabinets in the fridge and the upper cabinet and pushed over her picture of Christ that sat on the top of the upper cabinets.
And did you see any evidence with your own eyes that any damage had occurred that would be consistent with JJ climbing the cabinets?
No, I didn't see any scuffs on the fridge, and I didn't see any bent door hinges and the crown molding. That's the way it's fastened. It would have popped off if he would have gotten up there.
Okay. And so when she said that, what did she say she did with JJ?
She just called Alex and just said that you need to come and get him. I can't handle him.
Okay. And then she said she sent JJ with Alex.
Yeah.
Nothing further.
All right, thank you. That'll conclude then the testimony of this witness. Is there any objection to him being released from any subpoena?
The state would ask that he is.
No objection.
All right. Mr. Warwick, that concludes your testimony today. Then you can be escorted out of the courtroom by the bailiffs, and you are released from any subpoena that you're currently under. Thank you. All right, we're close to the noon hour. Is the state intending to call another witness at this time, or would you prefer we take our lunch break?
The next witness is fairly lengthy, so it may be a good time for lunch break.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the lunch break, and then I will have a quick sidebar with counsel just on scheduling if we could, and we will try to be back on probably between 12:30 and 1 for further testimony of the next witness.
All right, please.
Oh. It'll be sometime. I hope it's... Thank you. Please be seated. All right, I believe we're ready to have the jurors brought back in. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Let me have just a quick sidebar with counsel, please. All right, if we can have the jurors brought in, please.
All right, please. Jury's all present, counted for, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Noreen Vallow. We just completed the lunch break. The jurors are all back and accounted for, properly seated. The state's going to be calling another witness here shortly. Before we do that, I'll note that I've met with counsel in a sidebar to discuss scheduling. Essentially, the state's case in chief has been moving forward a little more quickly than may have been anticipated. And in order to avoid some gaps in trial time in the middle of days next week, there's been a proposal that we not have trial tomorrow on Friday and then start back up again with a full week on Monday. I think that's what the state's requested. Is that correct? Would somebody from the prosecution confirm that?
Yes, Your Honor. The case is moving much more quickly than we thought, so it won't delay the end of the trial at all by doing that. So that's our request.
Okay. Thank you, counsel. Is the defense concerned at all about having a day off tomorrow?
No, Your Honor, that's fine.
Okay, I appreciate you working towards that and letting the court know in advance. So for the jurors, again, we'll discuss that at the end of today, but we'll not be conducting trial tomorrow. We'll start again on Monday. That'll be our schedule moving forward. So, and as mentioned, it's not going to extend out the total time of the trial. The trial's just coming along more quickly than had been anticipated. So with that in mind, then, one other thing I'll note is there is a technical issue that's being sorted out right now, and it relates to the ability to show the demonstrative exhibits or use the overhead projector. So I'm fine with tech people in here working on that as we go, because we're here with some witness testimony we can commence with. If that's reset, we'll let you know. If we need to take a pause while they work on that in order to show exhibits, we'll deal with that when it comes. So with that in mind, then, let's see, Mr. Rammel, I think you're going to be calling the next witness. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, if you'd like to call your next witness, you can do so.
Thank you, Judge. The state would call Detective Bruce Mattingly.
All right, before you commence with your examination, Counselor, I'd like to just inquire of the witness who's now sworn, Detective Mattingly. Have you viewed any of the trial testimony in this case since it started?
No.
Okay, with that in mind then, I'll just ask you to please speak directly into that microphone. Try to avoid, make verbal responses to all the questions so we can keep the record straight, and try to avoid talking at the same time as anyone questioning you. Keep our record clear again with those rules in mind. Mr. Rammel, you can go ahead and inquire on your direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, can I have you state your full name, spell your last name for the record, please?
Thomas Brewster Mattingly. Last spelling is Mattingly.
And Detective, where are you employed?
Fremont County, Idaho Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed in that capacity?
22 years.
And how long have you been employed in law enforcement overall?
Sorry, let me restate. Overall in law enforcement, 22 years, and as a detective for the last 6 years.
Okay. And are you post-certified?
I am. I hold a master's certificate at Post.
You testify that you're a detective. Can you quickly tell the jury about your current duties and responsibilities as a detective in Fremont County?
Yeah, current duties for me in our county is anything that comes across my desk or assigned as a detective, which mostly will be felony cases, and then with that also assisting with other deputies in their investigations or things that they are assigned to. And also I work with evidence, logging that in, logging it out, and also with that will be death investigations.
Detective, I'm going to draw your attention to January 3rd of 2020. Were you working as a detective for Fremont County at that time?
Yes, I was.
What were you working on that day?
We were executing a search warrant at Chad Daybell's property located at 202 North, 1900 East in Fremont County, Idaho.
And Detective, were other agencies involved?
Yes.
Was FBI ERT on scene?
Yes, they were.
Detective, were you involved in the initial search and collection of evidence from that residence?
Initially, yes.
And after the execution of that search warrant, did you take possession of items found at that location?
I did.
And can you explain to the jury how that came about?
Yes, the ERT team collected the evidence, and then they gave that to my lieutenant, Joe Powell. And Joe Powell and I took those items to our station in St. Anthony, and we put them into evidence, and then after that I logged it into evidence.
And you have detailed evidence logs of what you logged in?
Yes, each item is numbered sequential and with a description of what those items are.
Detective, who has access to your evidence lab?
So that'll be 3 people. That'll be myself, Detective Vince Kayakakamanu, and Detective Jim Fabinich. Jim Fabinich. Spelling of... Yeah, Jim Fabinich. Spelling of his last is Fabnich.
Could you spell the other detective's name also, the last name?
I can. Kayakakamanu. Kaiakakamanu.
All right, that's what I thought.
Detective, on a later date, did you take additional action with items that were booked into evidence on January 3rd of 2020?
I did.
What was that?
So on January 15th, I took the items the electronic items that we had taken from that location to Salt Lake, to the IWR-CFL, which is the Intermountain West Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory.
And were those the same items, or the same electronic items that you booked into evidence on January 3rd of 2020?
They were the same.
How do you know?
From the property log, they were the same ones that I had taken and submitted into evidence, and so I knew which ones needed to be taken, and I just followed the same property log that was associated with that search warrant to be searched.
And Detective, were they transported by vehicle?
They were. I transported those.
And during that transportation, did any of those items ever leave your custody and control?
No, they did not.
What did you do after arriving at the Regional Computer Forensic Lab?
I took those electronic items to the lab and transferred them into their custody.
And did you provide identification at the lab?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, that's all I have for this witness.
All right. Any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Detective Mattingly. That'll conclude your testimony this afternoon.
And Your Honor, and this has been discussed with defense already, we do have Detective Mattingly under subpoena, and we're not going to be releasing him from that subpoena. There will be other unrelated items that he will be testifying to on this trial.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rammel. So, Detective, you'll be remaining under subpoena at the direction of the state to be recalled as a witness. During that time, please continue to avoid viewing any of the trial testimony in this case in any way. You'll be asked about that again if you're recalled to the stand. With that in mind, you can be excused for the day, and the bailiffs will direct you out of the courtroom.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Hamill, you can call your next witness.
Thank you, Judge. The state would next call FBI intelligence analyst Benjamin Dean.
All right, sir, before we begin with your testimony, I'll just inquire, have you in any way viewed any of the testimony that's occurred during the trial in this case? No. All right, thanks for your response. Please answer all questions verbally and avoid speaking at the same time as any attorney questioning you so we keep a clear record. With that in mind, then, Mr. Rammel, you can inquire on direct.
Thank you, Judge. Can I have you state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Benjamin Dean, D-E-A-N.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And how long have you worked for the FBI?
Approximately 8.5 years.
And what position do you currently hold with the FBI?
I'm an intelligence analyst.
And Mr. Dean, you're an intelligence analyst. Are you referred to as IA Dean?
Yeah.
And
yes, sir.
I have permission to refer to you as IA Dean? Is that okay?
You do.
Thank you. Can you briefly describe your educational, professional, and training background?
Yes. Prior to joining the FBI, I obtained a bachelor's degree in foreign and area language studies, foreign language and foreign area studies. And after joining the FBI, my first position was in the language services section, where my job was to review and report on the lawfully obtained electronic communications of case subjects in different parts of the country. Later, I became an intelligence analyst, and I attended what's called basic field training course for new analysts, and that was in Quantico, Virginia at the FBI Academy. And that training was 3 months long, and it consisted of classroom instruction, exercises, and exams that covered a range of topics, including threat analysis, analytic writing, and raw intelligence reporting.
And IA Dean, what office are you currently assigned to?
Salt Lake City field office.
And can you tell the jury what your day-to-day responsibilities are?
Yes. I work on a criminal investigative squad, and so I do often provide support to active cases, but my main job is to review information or analyze information and make assessments regarding specific threats. And so some of my daily tasks include reviewing information collected by agents out in the field or from other sources, looking for trends and patterns in that information, and writing reports or giving briefings with recommendations and findings.
Do you have any specific training or experience in reviewing electronic devices?
Yes.
Could you share that with the jury, please?
Yes, I can. So, as I previously mentioned, my work with the Language Services section of the FBI involved reviewing electronic communications of predicated case subjects from different field offices. And during that time, I attended a week-long course that was focused on best practices and techniques in monitoring and reporting on those types of records. Later, at the FBI Academy, I was trained in digital evidence collection and exploitation, as well as the use of telephone analysis software. Since then, I've attended virtual and in-person trainings focused on communications analysis, and as an analyst in the field, I've helped review electronic communications data for a number of active investigations, and that includes data obtained through legal process, from open source research, and from mobile device extractions.
Hi, Dean. Were you involved in the investigation into Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow Daybell?
Yes.
When did your involvement in that investigation begin?
It began in late March of 2020.
And what was your initial assignment in that case?
My initial assignment was to review tips submitted by members of the public in response to a press release that was issued by the FBI and the Rexburg Police Department on March 5th of 2020 concerning Tylee, Ryan, and JJ Vallow, who were missing at the time. And both Tylee and JJ had been seen at Yellowstone National Park on the 8th of September of 2019. And the press release requested that any members of the public who had visited the park that day and had taken pictures or videos during their visit to send those in case they might aid in the investigation.
Did you have any other assignments in support of this investigation?
Yes, I did.
What were they?
I was asked to assist in the review of data extracted from electronic storage devices that had been seized from the residence of Chad Daybell on January 3rd of 2020.
And when did you complete your review of those devices?
In late May of 2020.
Were you asked to review data from any other devices after you had completed those initial reviews?
Yes, I was.
And what were those additional devices you were requested to review?
I was asked to review the contents of 2 Blu-ray discs containing data that was extracted from storage devices that were seized on the same day, January 3rd, 2020, also from Chad Daybell's residence.
And how were they labeled?
A unique FBI specimen number was clearly written on each disc. One disc had the label IWR091201, and the other disc was labeled IWR091202. Also, both discs had clearly written on them the words "working copy."
Hi, Dean, I'm quickly going to draw your attention to the second disc. Testified IWR091202. You analyzed that disc?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to attribute that device to a specific user?
Yes, I was.
And who is that?
It belonged to Seth Daybell.
And are you aware throughout your investigation in this case who Seth Daybell is?
Yes.
And who is he?
He is the son of Chad Daybell and Tammy Daybell.
Dean, I'm going to draw your attention now to the first disc, IWR 091201. Is that the disc that you began reviewing first?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to draw your attention to that device. Through your investigation, did you review a chain of custody document on that specific device?
I did.
To your knowledge, where was that device immediately prior to being provided to you on that disk?
It was with the Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory in Salt Lake City.
Dean, when did you begin your review of that disk?
I began review of that disk on Tuesday, May 26th of 2020.
And can you describe to the jury, please, the process you used in doing that review?
I can. I used a Blu-ray disc reader to open up the disc on my FBI-issued laptop computer. I was able to see that the main file on that disc was named IWR 091201, and I copied that folder onto my laptop and began looking through its contents. I located a subfolder with an application file named cellbrightreader.exe and also a UFDR file named IWR 091201 report.ufdr. And so I double-clicked on the application file to launch the Cellbright Reader software program. And once it was fully loaded, I used it to open up the report.
And Dean, how does the data appear in Cellbright Reader?
Cellbright Reader organizes a device's data, so meaning all bits of information and files on the device, into categories based on a file's item type. So, for example, some example categories of items would be autofill, contacts, call log, voice calls, SMS messages or text messages, multimedia or MMS messages, and so on and so forth. Those categories are listed or shown in the Cellbright Reader window on the left-hand side in alphabetical order in a menu. And when you double-click on one of those category names, it opens up a data tab in the main Cellbright Reader window where it displays all the items that are within that category. And so there is also what's called timeline feature or timeline view, and that enables the review of items from multiple categories by arranging them in chronological order.
And what files types do you typically look at to determine the user of any given device?
Typically, I will look to see if there's a device user listed, and if it's a cell phone, I'll look at the phone number associated with the device or the phone. I'll also look at the content of any communication items that I can find on the device, and also if there's any images on the device, I'll look at those as well to try to determine a primary user.
And Dean, did you look at those file types for this device?
Yes, I did.
When reviewing those items, did it become apparent to you what type of device this was and who the user of the device was?
Yes, it did. It was clear to me that I was reviewing a cell phone belonging to Tylee Daybell, who was the wife of Chad Daybell. And that was clear to me for a few reasons.
And can you list those reasons to the jury, please?
I can. First, the device user was listed as Tammy. Second, the phone number associated with the device was the same phone number that appeared on other records and documents obtained in the investigation that was attributing that number to Tylee Daybell. There were incoming messages on the device, so text messages, multimedia messages addressing Tammy. addressed to Tammy, I should say. And there were outgoing messages on the device that were either introducing herself as Tammy or, in the case of emails, signing off as Tammy.
I.A. Dean, any posts or photos that you viewed that aided in your belief that this was a device belonging to Tammy Daybell?
Yes, there were. I found device notifications which alerted the user of the phone anytime there was a new Facebook post to a Facebook group named Daybells and Murs. And also, there were communications on the device with members of the Daybell family, including the Daybell children, and all of whom were named as contacts in the device. And the content of those communications suggested that the user of the device had a close family relationship with the Daybell children.
Anything else?
Yes, there were images on the device. There were photographs of Tammy Daybell, both by herself, with Chad Daybell, with their kids, and with their grandkids. And also, I did observe that all outgoing communications from the device, so voice calls, text messages, multimedia messages, there were no outgoing communications after the 18th of October of 2019.
And why is that date significant to you?
It's significant to me because I know that to be the day before first responders discovered Tammy Daybell deceased in her home.
And I.A. Dean, for the record, do you recall the phone number associated with this device that you have attributed to Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
And what is that number?
It is 801-669-4368.
I.A. Dean, I want to draw your attention now to September 9th of 2019. Did Tammy Daybell's phone receive any text messages that day?
Yes.
Were there any messages sent to Tammy's phone that day that caught your attention?
Yes, there were.
And what was the phone number from which those messages were sent?
208-690-9374.
And was there a contact name stored on the phone for that number?
Yes, there was.
And what was the contact name associated with that number?
Chad.
I.A. Dean, throughout your review of this device, have you reviewed other messages sent by the contact saved as Chad in that specific device?
Yes.
And based on your review of those other messages sent by this phone number, who did you believe that number belonged to?
I believe it belonged to Chad Daybell based on my review of the other messages.
And why is that?
There are several reasons for that. First, the phone number ending in 9374 was a match for the phone number that appeared in other documents and records obtained in the investigation to that point, and associating that number as one of the phone numbers used by Chad Daybell. So that was one indicator. Also, there were group that number ending in 9374 was part of group messages found on the device with members of the Daybell family, so with the Daybell children, and the content of those communications likewise suggested that the user of that number had a close family relationship with the Daybell children. And in addition, there were text messages, or I would say the exchanges between Tammy and the user of this 9374 number indicated that they lived in the same home and that another individual named Garth also lived in the same home.
Hi, Dean. I'm going to draw your attention back to messages sent on September 9th, 2019 from that specific device that caught your attention. Your Honor, may I have the witness behand what has been marked as State's Exhibit 229?
Yes.
Your Honor, for the record, I have provided defense a courtesy copy and the court a courtesy copy as well.
All right. Thank you, Counselor.
I'll give you a moment.
Thank you.
Dean. Dean, will you look at what has been marked as State's Exhibit 229? What is this?
This is a copy of text messages exchanged between Chad and Tammy on 9th of September 2019.
And how do you know this?
I know because I reviewed these text messages, these same text messages, during my review of Tammy's device, Tammy's phone.
And Dean, is it a true and accurate representation of messages you reviewed that were sent on September 9th, 2019, starting at 11:53 a.m.?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I would move to admit what has been marked as State's 229.
Any objection?
Your Honor, I can't recall when counsel gave me a copy of this in all my stacks. I don't know where it is. Can I see the exhibit?
Your Honor, I have another copy. It was before lunch. That's fine.
Got it. I found it.
Can I have the extra copy back? Your Honor, the state had moved to admit what has been marked as State's 229.
All right.
I knew that motion.
And is there any objection from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 229 is admitted.
And Your Honor, at this point, I would put it on a duplicate of it on the screen.
I think it's working.
Okay, is it working?
I believe so, if you want to publish it.
Your Honor, do I have permission to publish a duplicate copy that defense has just reviewed?
You have permission to publish the exhibit.
And Your Honor, thank you. And Your Honor, I guess I'll defer to Mr. Dean if he can read those messages. If not, if he could be provided a courtesy copy that he can read from.
All right, it's on his monitor as well. So.
Mr. Dean, are you able to read what has been marked as State's Exhibit 229?
Yes.
Okay. Will you please read aloud the messages in this exhibit, including the timestamps and the contact name associated with these messages?
Yes. So starting first one, 9/9/2019, 11:53:27 a.m. from Chad. Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times.
And the next message?
9/9/2019, 11:56:59 a.m. from Chad. Gonna shower now and then go right for a while at BYU. Love you.
And the next, please.
9/9/2019, 2:47:06 p.m. to Chad. Good for you.
And finally, the last message.
9/9/2019, 2:48:20 p.m. from Chad. I'm back home now.
Dean, why did these messages catch your attention?
The first message in particular stood out to me because it was longer and more detailed than any of the other messages exchanged between Chad and Tammy that I had found or that I would later find on the device. Generally speaking, Chad and Tammy kept their messages relatively short, to the point, and they mostly had to do with financial or logistical issues of day-to-day life. such as picking up or dropping off checks, whether or not food needed to be picked up for animals at the house or at their property, and what time one or the other was planning to get home or planning to leave the house. This message appeared to be the first and only time that I could see from everything on the device wherein Chad texted Tammy a rather detailed and step-by-step explanation of his day's events in sort of a narrative style.
And I.A. Dean, based on your investigation, including your initial assignment in this case, did the date of this message catch your attention?
It did.
Why?
If you recall from earlier in my testimony, my initial assignment for this case was to review tips submitted by members of the public in response to the joint FBI Rexburg PD press release from March 5th of 2020 concerning the whereabouts of Tylee, Ryan, and JJ Vallow. And both Tylee and JJ had been seen at Yellowstone National Park on the 8th of September of 2019, and so that press release was requesting members of the public who were at the park that day and had taken photos or videos to send those in so that they could hopefully aid in the investigation somehow. After reviewing hundreds of tips containing information, photographs, video footage taken from across Yellowstone National Park on or around that date, the 8th of September 2019, I was well aware that that was the last day that Tylee Ryan was seen alive. And so upon reading this text message, sent from Chad, wherein he claims to have built a fire, shot and killed a large animal, and buried it on his property, I became concerned because I recognized that it was sent the day after Tylee Ryan was last seen alive.
Hi, Dean, what did you do after reviewing this information?
I relayed the information to the case agents.
Thank you. Your Honor, this is all I have for this witness.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rammel. Cross-examination?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. That'll conclude the testimony of the witness then. Is this witness going to be released from any subpoena, or are they going to be recalled, Mr. Rammel?
Your Honor, the state would move to release this witness from his subpoena.
All right, any objection to that from the defense?
No.
All right, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, does the state have a next witness to call?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Detective Sergeant Dave Stubbs. While he's coming in, may we have a brief sidebar? I just want a couple housekeeping issues real quick.
Yes. if we're ready to have you indicated who the witness is going to be. They could be.
I believe I did, but I'll do it again. Detective Sergeant David Stubbs.
Okay, if the witness can be brought in, we'll have him placed under oath. All right, before we get started with your testimony, Detective Stubbs, I'll just advise you we're making a court record here, so please avoid talking at the same time anyone else is talking. Make verbal responses to any questions you're asked. And then I'll also inquire and ask, have you reviewed or listened to or in any way seen any of the trial testimony that's taken place so far in this case?
I have not.
Okay, thank you for that. With that in mind then, Ms. Smith, you can inquire of the witness on direct.
As a preliminary matter, Your Honor, the state, well, let me do it this way. Sir, could you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell your last name?
Yes. I am Detective Sergeant David Stubbs with the City of Rexburg Police Department. I spell my last name Stubbs.
And, Your Honor, to ease his testimony and in agreement in part with defense counsel, the state is going to move to admit various certified copies and business records that relate to this and other witnesses' testimonies. And I believe the state has supplied the business records notice to the defense and has supplied notice to the court as is allowed. And so the state's first request would be to admit State's Exhibit 103, the Amazon certified business records received from Amazon involving Alex Cox and providing information attributable to emails from multiple users. Copy was previously provided to defense counsel and a courtesy copy was supplied to court.
All right, thank you. Exhibit 103 has been offered. Is there any objection from the defense?
No objection.
All right, 103 is admitted.
Your Honor, the state would next move under the same posture. The state filed the notice for business records and had certified copies supplied to the defense for States 104, the Ballard Insurance Group certified business records involving Chad Daybell.
All right, 104 has been offered. Any objection from the defense?
No objection.
Thank you. 104 is admitted.
Thank you. The state will then move to admit under the same rule that the state supplied the business records notice and supplied the certified copy with the affidavit of the custodian for State's Exhibit 105, which is the Brigham Distributing certified business records for the books and accounting for Chad Daybell, Tammy Daybell, and Spring Creek Book Company from January 1st, 2019 through July of 2022.
All right. Exhibit 105's been offered. Is there any objection from the defense?
No objection.
105 is admitted.
The state would move to admit State's Exhibit 106. It is the certified records from the Expedia Group reflecting the travel records and various account records of Lori N. Vallow.
Any objection on 106?
On these certificates, this affidavit of records, the actual pages aren't attached to it. I'm just looking at the affidavit of records. Is that correct, counsel?
Yes, as we've done with previous, all of these were supplied to you in discovery, but rather than supply tens of thousands of sheets of paper to the jury, we will do the specific pages by each witness, just so that we don't have, there's over 100,000 pages with some of these records, so we are doing the business record certification just like we did with Detective Consitis.
Okay, very good. Yeah, no objection to 106.
Okay.
All right, thank you. 106 is admitted.
The next one is State's Exhibit 107, which are certified Google business records from multiple users and accounts, and was previously supplied by defense counsel.
Exhibit 107 is offered. Is there any objection?
No objection.
That will be admitted.
And the state's next one is State's Exhibit 108, certified business records specifically as to the account associated with tammy.daybell@gmail.com and a Fitbit Ulta attributed to Tammy Daybell.
Any objection on Exhibit 108?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. 108 is admitted.
109 is the Hampton Inn certified business records for Alexander Cox and Lori Vallow, dated records for their folio information for those user accounts.
Any objection as to 109?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. 109 is admitted.
Moving forward in the exhibit list, Your Honor, the state is moving to Exhibit 123, which is the certified business records for Rise Broadband for an account attributable to Seth Daybell, but with a service address of 202 North, 1900 East, Rexburg, Idaho.
All right, 123 has been offered. Is there any objection?
No objection.
123 is admitted then.
The next record would be the certified business records from Southwest Life Insurance Company. It is, let me make sure I get that title correctly, Life Insurance Company of Southwest, otherwise known as LSW.
Any objection on, did we get a number on that?
Oh, I apologize, maybe 124?
Thank you. That's Exhibit 124. It's been offered. Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
124 is admitted.
The next would be certified business records from T-Mobile for a specific account 965804123.
And what exhibit number is that?
That would be helpful. I apologize, Judge. 125.
125 is offered. Is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
125 is admitted.
Okay. The next the state is offering is 126, certified business records and notice for an account with a phone number 208-690-9374.
Any objection as to 126?
No.
Exhibit 126 is admitted.
The next one would be State's Exhibit 127, certified business records from Verizon for multiple phone numbers. Do you want those phone numbers in the record, Judge? Because we have a lot of business, a lot of Verizon accounts.
Not necessarily. If these are previously reviewed with counsel and you believe there's a stipulation, I think that's sufficient to identify it. So 127's offered. Is there any objection to Exhibit 127?
No objection.
All right. Exhibit 127's admitted.
That wraps up segment number 3 of our continuous coverage in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. There is certainly more to come. Be sure to press subscribe so you don't miss any of our continuous coverage.
This is continuous coverage
Continuous coverage. Continuous coverage.
in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell from the Hidden Killers podcast.
Hidden Killers Podcast.